Tokyo Ghoul RE Call to Exist was developed by Three Wings and came out in 2019, being based off the manga series, well, it's actually based on the anime adaptation of Suyashida's manga series of Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul RE. I had to make the nomination based on the anime because the anime has several changes, including entire season 2 that is non-canon to the manga. So, the distinction is very important to make here. Our main premise, which is just recapping anime, so the main premise of Tokyo Ghoul is that the world is filled with both humans and ghouls. Ghouls appear human, but have these giant tentacle appendages called Kagune and have superhuman strength. The downside to ghouls is that they can only consume humans. If they try to eat anything else, it would only taste terrible, but it will also make them physically sick. With Kaneki not liking ghouls since they eat humans, and later ends up going on a date with a woman that he had a crush on named Rize. Rize ends up turning out to be a ghoul, and after Rize nearly kills and tries to eat Kaneki, she ends up being killed by some construction equipment nearby, dropping on her. Due to the massive damage Rize did onto Kaneki's body, a doctor performs emergency surgery, placing Rize's organs into Kaneki, and ends up turning him into a half-ghoul. Now he has all the traits of a ghoul, but also still has all his memories of being human, and the fact of, cannibalism is bad, really puts him in a bad situation. And the sad part is, I just recapped the main premise of Tokyo Ghoul better than the game actually does. Which then leads to the main premise of Tokyo Ghoul RE Call to Exist. It barely tells you anything about the narrative of Tokyo Ghoul or Tokyo Ghoul RE. Instead, it will have this glossary section that will tell you information by recapping events from the anime, recapping terms and stuff, or character information, but this only updates after you complete the level in which that actually takes place. So you're gonna go into a level confused, you don't know Tokyo Ghoul, and then have to get the information after the fact, which is a baffling way of handling it. On top of the fact that despite me just explaining the premise of Tokyo Ghoul, the immediate next thing this game does is skips straight very far before you get to the actual first level of the game that's playable, with the game basically skipping from the beginning of Tokyo Ghoul to about 6.5 volumes of manga later and 12 episodes of the anime later, with the first actual playable section being during the final 5 minutes of season 1 of the anime. Despite there being so many good places within Tokyo Ghoul to have a pretty much tutorial, everything in order to explain the player stuff, it just skips the entirety of a good chunk of Tokyo Ghoul and just skips straight to the big moment where, oh, now Kaneki has the white hair and everything, which is just a baffling choice. You're trying to recap Tokyo Ghoul because so much is skipped. If I were to show you in the freaking game's in-game recap system of the anime, this is how many blips are being skipped just to get to the actual first mission that's playable, which is a baffling choice because you basically skipped the setup for most of Tokyo Ghoul at that point. So on top of just poorly recapping and showing events that happen within the story of Tokyo Ghoul, you skipped the setup and character introductions for so many characters. On top of the fact that the first actual chunk of the game takes place in Tokyo Ghoul Season 2, Route A. So not only is a good chunk of the game in the non-canon section of Tokyo Ghoul, you missed the setup of everything beforehand on top of it, which is even worse. To highlight how badly things are set up, they wait until the end of the Route A section to actually introduce to the player and explain Kaneki's best friend Hide. The character you meet in the beginning of Tokyo Ghoul is instead explained at the end of a section of the video game. Another weird choice is that they'll actually keep the dialogue at least similar to the anime and the story of Tokyo Ghoul, which means there are several instances where you'll be doing a boss fight that the character you're playing as loses the fight, and yet the dialogue will reflect that the character is struggling and can't even win. Meanwhile in gameplay, you're doing perfectly fine. Was done a weird thing where they put you in fights that the character chronically loses, and wants you to win the fight in the gameplay, even though narrative-wise, the game is telling you you're supposed to be doing a bad job and struggling very hard. You also have the method getting the story across, with either using images from the anime as the characters talk, or having this kind of visual novel-esque screen, which they probably should have used more in the game, but feels like it's rarely used, and the main methods being the characters just talking during the levels, including talking during the boss fights in order to get the dialogue across, which is just not the best way of conveying the story, on top of the fact they're skipping so much. Hell, they skip so much, they still have to do recaps of all the stuff they skip between levels as well, in order to explain the setup of what's going on to the next level, on top of the fact that's still not enough, and then you have to use the gallery system, and the gallery system's still not enough, and this is just a terrible way to experience Tokyo Ghoul story, because you will understand nothing. Even if there is an entire glossary, it is just not gonna go well. There are so many characters that are mentioned in this glossary who maybe show up for maybe one level in this entire game and everything, or in the side mode that I'll get to later. When it comes to narrative, this game is a piss poor way of actually experiencing Night of Tokyo Ghoul. It should not be your first way to experience Night of Tokyo Ghoul. Read the manga. Don't even watch the anime. I don't consider the anime good. When people say season 1 anime is good, I do not think so, because it butchers Kaneki's character for 12 episodes, so read the manga, please. This is just a bad way of explaining the story, even if it does have the glossary and everything to explain the terms, but you'll also be reading terms information that never actually come up since they skip it. Oh, here's a glossary term for Ghoul's feeding grounds. Great! You skip the entirety of season 1, so what the hell does the term feeding ground even relevant to this video game? Kind of whole entire thing. Oh, here's recap of characters. Characters who don't show up in this game at all. Thanks? Okay? The only bonus I can give to this game is that, strangely enough, they actually add in a boss fight at the end of the Route A section that wasn't depicted in the Route A anime. So this is bringing in a fight that happened in the manga, but now they're depicting it in the Route A version of the anime that should have had it, but completely skipped it. So points for that. That is a cool thing they did, but that's not the only cool thing the game does narrative-wise when it comes to trying to represent Tokyo Ghoul. Next up is the gameplay, with Tokyo Ghoul already called to exist, being dubbed a survival action game. It is an action game, who are you kidding yourselves? Anyway, the main gameplay, when it comes to the story mode specifically, has you playing as several characters depending on which side of the story you're depicting. And depending as King Kaneki, then it will be Kaneki throughout the series in different forms, whether it be him as a ghoul, and his ghoul abilities being a fight against Kagune in order to use a guard break, or an AoE attack, or he has basic melee attacks. No matter which character you play as, you have essentially this stamina bar of sorts that limits how many times you can dodge, how many times you can do your big powerful attacks. Your basic attacks do not use up this meter. And despite not having a long-range weapon, you still have a long-range ability with Kaneki, which is pretty cool. They basically try to cover all grounds, even if his long-range weapon Kagune is pretty limited because it's just him stretching it out so it can't go super far. But when it comes to playing as the ghoul, the main thing is the different kind of Kagunes you have, with the story mode not really showcasing it much since you're limited who the character you play as. But when it comes to the Rinkaku with Kaneki, it is decent enough, and it is different when you play later in the multiplayer mode and create your own character, and that character's Rinkaku is different from Kaneki, since lore-wise it makes sense that they would function differently since Kaneki was inherited from Rize and everything. On the story mode, you have sections you get to play as a CCG, who are the people that are meant to eliminate ghouls, with their playstyle, depending on what you're playing as, with Cultural Amon, being the fact that his weapon has a fast attack mode, a slower strong attack mode, and the ability to block or do a powerful guard break depending on which form his Quinque is. His Quinque being a weapon he's wielding that is essentially made out of a ghoul's Kagune, which is a unique way of giving him a block. I was surprised Kaneki had a block, but now Here's Amon with a block because his Quinque has a block mode. He has a projectile with the fact that the main gimmick of playing a CCG is that they have access to items using grenades, fire grenades, Anteiku gas, and stuff like that, which is an interesting way of separating them and everything, although they really limit how much the Anteiku gas you're actually able to carry. Like, you're going to carry 3, you can only carry 10 grenades. Like, it's a bit weird in that aspect. The weirdest part is the fact that they give you a Quinque gun, with Amon's being an assault rifle, which is blatantly the best tool in his arsenal. It kills ghouls fast, everything, it recharges pretty fast, and the game constantly gives you ammo for everything. The main downside to playing the CCG is the fact that they can't take a lot of hits, and when it comes to healing, their healing method is by getting medkits, which take about 1 to 2 seconds to actually use. So the downside is when it comes to your defense, it is weaker than playing as a ghoul. But the ghoul's downside is the fact that they can't carry items, and instead have to find little paper bags filled with human organs, or they have to instead take down and do a follow-up attack on the enemies, which you're not always getting a prompt for a follow-up attack, but you can try and set it up. So basically this trade-off of CCG can get more things done quickly, but may take more hits, while a ghoul can last way longer and have better healing, but they're not strangely as efficient as taking out enemies considering they're a ghoul or superhuman. I don't think about it. That's a very weird thing. You also have the side of Aogiri being an entire ghoul organization, and the main person you're playing as being Ayato Kirishima, with his version of a Kagune being the fact that it's supposed to be long-range focused, but in reality his long range is pretty meh, and he's very good at close range, so very weird aspect, because this game's long range when it comes to the ghouls just aren't that good, and even when they're freaking Kagune is supposed to specialize in long range, but whatever. It's mainly the fact that he's able to attack really fast and is very good at guard breaking with this kind of setup. So that's the whole entire thing. Lastly, there's the Touka Ghoul RE section, where you have the Quinx or the Qs, which are essentially these CCGs who are half ghoul. So they have a combination of the ghoul playstyle and the CCG playstyle. Somehow they play the worst because they essentially don't have the best aspects of either side depending on what tools they have. Going based off of Haise Sasaki, who you play for most of the whole entire RE section, for instance, when it comes to the Q side, his weapon is pretty slow despite using a sword. Sure, you have a Kagune attack, but it's not as good as Kaneki's Kagune attacks, on top of the fact that his projectile weapon is a pistol, which is pretty decent, but it's not as fast as Amon's machine gun, and that doesn't really fit to feel as efficient as freaking Kaneki just using his Kagune as a projectile. So it's a very weird thing where you get all the items and stuff, but it feels like when it comes to your other aspects, you feel pretty limited, strangely enough. It just feels weird. But again, it's going best on the story mode because there are other characters you play as and other Quinque you can use, and other characters, such as there are side missions in the RE section where you play as other characters in the Q side. Well, one other character for some reason, story mode's sake. So there are other characters who can feel better, but I'm going based off the main characters the story mode has you playing with. Every character also has a super meter, which can be used to do a big powerful attack, or if you let it fill up twice, then you can able to go into this super state called Awaken mode, which basically increase all your stats, but the main drawback is that you can't use your supers. With the fact that when used with Kaneki throughout the series, he has different super modes, and are just way better than his super attacks, so I'm just better off using the Awaken mode, especially later on when you're playing as Haise Sasaki, and his super mode is a form that weirdly is super mode only, when in reality it should probably just be his natural state considering that part of the story, but okay. Or the fact that Kaneki's final form as Kagune is a super mode only feature, when once again, that should be his base state, but I didn't make the game, okay? It's weird how some of his states that should be his base at that moment are instead relegated to a super mode. And it's not as if they don't go to the effort of depicting all the stages of Kaneki, because you even have an entire level, one whole level just dedicated to Black Reaper Kaneki, which, the fact they made an entire level just for this version of the character, I mean, hats off to you. There's also Centipede form, which is only used for about 2 boss fights in the entire game, which again, you made an entirely new version of character with different playstyle and combat, and only used it for 2 boss fights, not even full levels. 2 boss fights, technically 3, so you fight it also from the CCG side. Weirdly dedicated to some things. When it comes to exploring a level, it's not a whole lot to find. It has to be like some hidden red code ghouls, but that's about it. Levels are pretty straightforward, but they don't have their gimmicks, whether it be a security lines you have to pretty much try to avoid, or what the game loves doing is needing you to open a door or something that takes time to open, with the fact that a lot of the time, it's just you standing there and holding a button. And since the enemy AI is the most competent, but then again neither is your ally AI, it'll just have you standing there and you can just immediately open it, because sometimes the enemy AI may not even acknowledge that you were even there to begin with, and distracted, whole entire weird aspect when it comes to the game's AI. So a lot of the stuff that they try to do in order to add more stuff to the levels isn't really all that impactful, especially levels where the goal is to rescue people. Once again, just go into their body, hold a button, and done. There's no actual danger because of the fact that since they're in a down state, the enemies won't attack them. Not as if hurry and rescue them before they get fully killed off. No, they'll be fine as long as they'll be fine completely. You can take out the enemies first and everything, and they'll be good. Tell you what, they do cover several enemy types from Tokyo Ghoul, with the last ones being appropriately a bit annoying with their gimmick being the fact that when they sometimes get defeated, they explode. Whole entire aspect. Although there is a weird thing where you have ghouls using machine guns on ghouls when regular bullets don't hurt ghouls. Weird decision there. Why not just have them be the long range freaking Kagune types and make that their projectiles instead of machine guns? Which they did do in the side mode, but not in the main mode for some reason. I'm trying to shoot Kaneki with bullets. What are you guys trying to do? You do have boss battles with the game, and the boss battles are pretty decent enough, although, once again, there's one boss fight that should have taken place with the awakened state Kaneki, considering that was how he was in the story, but instead they make you fight as Haise Sasaki, which is just, once again, weird decision that they made how he's supposed to be acting in that segment into a powered up form rather than his base form from that segment. Like, they're gonna make Centipede form Kaneki for 2 boss fights. They could have made that awakened state version of Kaneki just for that one boss fight throughout the entire thing. But again, awakened state is busted, so it'd probably be too powerful. And weird quick in this game is the fact that there is no jump button. Why is this weird? It's because when you go off a ledge, you can do a big slam attack. Once again, there's no jump button to try and find something or for the character to get some slight elevation off of and then do a slam. Weirdly enough, an enemy can actually knock you into the air and you usually immediately counter with a slam. Like, that kind of weird aspect where anytime your character is knocked into the air or falls from a great height, they can then do a slam attack, even though the game has no jump button, so you can't really do it yourself unless there's some small thing you can have a prompt to technically leap off of. So weirdly handled. On top of the fact that while this game has ladders, no one in the game actually climbs the ladder. Like, everyone's animation is them just jumping to the higher elevation. We have ladders for just for suggestion. Even the CCG will just jump the distance. Now for what the game fully feels built for, which is the multiplayer mode, which they do warn you is non-canon of Tokyo Ghoul. Acting as if this game is a good recap of Tokyo Ghoul, or acting as if Route A is canon of Tokyo Ghoul when it isn't. But anyway, the multiplayer mode lets you make your own custom character, whether it be a ghoul, investigator, or one accused squad. Not a whole lot of customizations, it's just using the assets already in the game, and you need to unlock more of the assets as well, because doing the full story mode isn't enough to unlock a lot. You need to also do parts of multiplayer mode as well. There's a campaign mode where you're able to go through the levels for the story mode, just wholesale, but now you have an entire squad with you. The weird part is the fact that the levels are locked to certain organizations, like the fact that the first level in the game, where you're escaping the Algiri tree base as Kaneki, can only be done as a CCG member for some reason. Or a different level I was trying to do, which is invading the Ghoul prison Cochlea, can only be done with ghouls. So, with aspects like that, we can't really mix and match certain levels because they're hard locked to what role you can play. Meaning, the first thing I did was a ghoul character, and the first level I did, so I couldn't use a ghoul character. Thanks. A weird aspect is, in order to unlock stuff, you first have to do the requirement, then go to the rewards / accomplishments section, and then the game gives you the reward. So just doing the task isn't enough. You have to go to the accomplishment menu in order for the game to acknowledge you actually unlocked the stuff, and you do unlock a lot of the levels just by beating one campaign level. So it's not as if you need to do a lot at the campaign levels. You want to do that, whether it be single player form or co-op form with friends. There's also a survival mode, which you can play in co-op and get into an online lobby as well, and a PvP mode. Those last two things I didn't do because you think Touka already called to exist has an active player base. The answer is not really, but there are people on Steam forums who are trying, so an effort is being made. And the reason I say this mode is the main focus of the game is because even a single player functions as kind of like a multiplayer-esque mode, being the fact that how it handles your AI companions when it comes to the way they act and stuff, the fact that you can revive them, heal them and stuff, or the fact that if you were to go down, the game will actually give you a counter for the AI to revive you or just respawn you. Even having a prompt that says, oh, player died, basically fully feeling like it's just a single player version of the multiplayer mode, which was like the main focus of this game. And from what I've seen, people did enjoy the multiplayer mode, and I will say, having a multiplayer mode where you have now the big name characters just showing up in the levels or they're trying to stop your progress, on top of the different goals for levels, is enjoyable kind of thing. And if I had co-op players, I can see why this would be the big appeal of the game, because it doesn't feel the focus. Make your own custom character, being able to try the different kind of Kagune, different kind of Quinques, and stuff like that, and then just go hog wild, would be definitely an appeal of this game. And it's crazy how this somehow feels like a secondary mode when it feels like the main draw of the game. Now for the game's text, I like the fact that when it comes to the cutscenes that show the anime screenshots, they do have a window behind the white text, making it easy to read, on top of the white text also being on top of this paper background as well, as if reading off for a journal of some sorts. Although when you get to the actual in-game, these subtitles, especially for tutorials, becomes really small for some reason, and you have a better window when it has the visual novel S talking, so it's like, why couldn't we keep things consistent in that case? And especially the recap text between missions, where that one's just completely minuscule. Like, they do well at some places where the text's more readable. Instead of this game only has a Japanese dub, for whatever reason, it's like, reading to get the text thing right comes to this case. It's weird how, with the cutscenes and screenshots, it works. Then some of the stuff in game text, characters talking or objectives, become small, but in the visual novel text scenes actually have a better background and easy to read, which they should be because dialogue. It's just weirdly consistent. And then there's the gloss switch to smash all that information, so it's being very small because of how much info they need to put on there, but it's like, just give a bigger box or something, my goodness. Why? I will praise that even if the in-level text is tiny, at least they still give it a background to distinguish it from everything else. That way it makes it easier to read in that sense. I just wish the text was bigger at that point. If you're already thinking, okay, we need a background, make it easier to read, now you need to make the text itself bigger to coincide with it, you know? Overall, Touka already called to exist. It's alright. I see people bash this as some big abomination. it's not nearly that bad. Like, it wasn't a really terrible licensed game. Freaking go play Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku 1 and get back to me. But it's just decent. Like, you can see where the care and attention was put by the developers 3 Wings with some of the stuff they didn't have to include, but they went out of their way to do it. Or the cool little touches where, like I said, playing as a Rinkaku freaking Ghoul is different than playing as specifically Kaneki as well. Or the fact that you can play as several of the characters who aren't made available in story mode in the multiplayer mode. Granted, to unlock them first, but you can play as them or use your playstyle for a create a character and everything. It's the fact that you just wish there was more to this game. You don't think there's like it should have been made, you think there should have been more to it. Because you can see some stuff with the fact that they'll go far enough. The story mode, a terrible way of recapping the story of Tokyo Ghoul is now be someone's first experience of the Tokyo Ghoul narrative, and the multiplayer mode is the big focus, and you can have fun in the multiplayer mode, especially since now they start sprinkling in the named characters as these boss fights that get in your way, and they're more challenging in this mode compared to the main game, especially since you're now always in a group of 4 when it comes to multiplayer campaign sections. So you can really see what's going on, what they're trying to do with the game in the multiplayer mode, just not in the main story mode that's trying to recap Tokyo Ghoul, but it's trying to recap the anime, which is a poor recap of the manga, and just read the manga, please. What's our aspect? On top of the fact that the game has to skip the entire season 1 of the anime and go straight into the non-canon season 2, so on top of the fact you know what's going on, not just getting the worst of the Tokyo Ghoul anime. Listen, I know there's people who like Rize, I didn't. So, you're just getting the worst of the worst up front because that aspect of half the game is now Route A and the other half is now Tokyo Ghoul RE. Kind of counter aspect. And RE will leave you confused as an anime watcher because the follow-up of non-canon season, so they're even more confused in the game. Kind of whole entire thing. So we gotta say about Tokyo Ghoul RE Call to Exist, it's just alright. It's not this abomination people try to make it out to be, but yeah, if you want Tokyo Ghoul, just play Dead by Daylight. Although in this case, with those developers botching things up, might not be the best time to play Dead by Daylight. But it's the best Tokyo Ghoul content you got. That's all I gotta say about Tokyo Ghoul RE Call to Exist. Alrighty then, good day. And if you don't have main languages, RE means